Hello and welcome. I'm Dr. Tina Ray, educational and child psychologist, and this is the third from my 20 session series of wellbeing focus sessions for teens and tweens, so primarily focused at children and young people. So today's quick focus is on challenging negative thoughts. I think it's obvious to all of us, adults and young people alike, that when we feel anxious or upset under pressure, we tend to view everything through a negative lens, negatively. And sometimes we can really begin to think in quite an extreme way. We only look for the bad things in a situation. And we also, some of us, have a tendency to take things really quite personally. This means that we also can really exaggerate the consequences of the situation and blame ourselves for what's happened or other people in quite an irrational way. And this is common to us as human beings. It's part of being a human being, the human condition. Every one of us has what I call NATs, negative automatic thoughts, on a daily basis. These might be around all sorts of issues for us. So, for example, I always look ugly. I don't understand this work. I never will. He thinks I'm stupid. I'm an idiot. She gave me a nasty look. I'm just such a useless person. I can't do it. I'll never be able to do it like other people or my friends can, for example. And this is something that is quite natural and quite normal. These negative automatic thinking patterns that just pop into our head and we repeat and we repeat them. They arise from what I call several errors in the way in which we think, including these 6 types of faulty thinking. So as I talk through these, I want you to think about whether or not you tend to make use of one of these types of faulty thinking, because I think I'm going to give you a wee challenge about what you need to do in order to try and prevent this. So doing ourselves down, very often just focusing on the negatives in a situation and seeing the bad things about ourselves. So, I'm not good at this, I'm not good at that, I'm always bad at that. Nobody likes me, they never will. It's because I'm not a very good person, etc. Blowing things up or catastrophizing. I love the word catastrophizing because that signifies for me this notion that this small problem, this small negative thought can be blown up out of all proportion. And it really is about making a situation or a thought much, much worse than it really is. Predicting failure, a common thinking error, one of the 6. So setting your mind ready to predict failure, whatever the situation is. So you're going to go and take a test and you're thinking, oh, well, I'm bound to fail. I'm bound to get 0%. I'm bound not to come first. I'm bound to get it wrong. I'm bound to be in a situation where no one likes me. But that's a bit like, I suppose, fortune telling, isn't it? Looking in that globe and thinking I can see the future. Well, we can't actually. Over emotional thought. This is when your emotions become really, really powerful. They almost overtake you. It's like you've been hijacked by them. And that stops you being able to think clearly, to process information, to be logical about a situation and challenge what you're actually thinking. Setting yourself up is a really common thinking error that many of us engage in. So setting yourself really huge targets that are far too high, so you're going to fail, and that kind of confirms for you that you are a failure or you feel like a failure. There's the evidence for it. And I think when we're anxious, we're much more likely to set ourselves really big, unrealistic goals rather than the small steps that we should be thinking about. Blaming yourself is another common thinking error, thinking that everything that goes wrong is your own fault. So, I got on the computer, I touched the keys, it crashed. It's down to me. It's nothing to do with the electronic situation. It's because I made that happen. It's my fault. And I think it's a useful thing to do to think about each of those 6 errors in turn and think about which one of those you engage in the most, which one have you used the most in your daily thinking patterns. What we need to be able to do is recognize that very often the way that we think about things is not always particularly accurate. Okay, so and this is all about challenging negative thoughts. It's not as simple as turning a positive or a negative, sorry, to a positive. It's not that simple. Okay, this is about actually thinking, is this really, really true? How true is this for me? And it's about testing the evidence. And very often psychologists will use this when they use what they call cognitive behavior therapy approaches, or CBT. I think it's useful to work through this structure, thinking about what is the evidence for my thoughts. Sometimes I would get a young person to write that down. Then what's the evidence against it? You probably have much more evidence for it because you've probably been thinking this negative thought regularly on a daily basis. Then I say, what would my best friends say if they heard my thought? Best friend or someone who loves me, keeps me in mind. What would they say to me? And they might say, well, actually, I don't think you're being logical. I think because this is the case, that's not quite true. What would my teacher say? One of my teachers who really does value me. What would my parents or carers say if they heard my thought? And then this one, what would I say to my best friend, someone I really love and value and trust, if she or he had this same thought? What would I be saying to them? And I ask young people to write this down. It's almost like you're developing a script, because when you read that back, very often I'll be saying to someone, well, actually think about this. Isn't that what you should be saying to yourself when you have that negative automatic thought, rather than letting it escalate into this big catastrophic pattern of thinking, feeling and behaving? Why not just stop and say, do you know what, I'm going to use that, I'm going to write that on a little memory card or a post-it note, and next time I think this way, I'm going to take that out, because that's what I say to my best friend. If they were thinking this, maybe this is what I should be saying to myself. So finally, am I making mistakes here? For example, am I blowing it up, forgetting my strengths or good points here, self-blaming or predicting failure, or thinking that I can actually mind read what other people are thinking? So identifying and challenging those errors of thinking by testing the evidence. I think this strategy is really, really useful. And for me, it's one of my life's well-being top tips, my life skill. I always use this on a regular basis because, like any other child or young person or adult, I have negative thoughts on a regular daily basis, probably. So I have to use this testing the evidence thought, challenging myself to see if this is really that true, because thoughts, as I said, are not always truths. Okay, and it's really important to gather accurate evidence. What we believe about ourselves isn't always true. It's very often not how other people see us or how other people perceive us. Okay, so we need to challenge these NATs, these negative automatic thoughts. It doesn't mean, as I said, trying to change them to positive ones. Okay, that's too easy to say, oh, I'm going to change a negative to a positive, and that's really, really difficult. What we're really doing here is we're changing something that doesn't work for us, an ineffective way of thinking, into something that's more realistic and balanced. Okay, I can't change I'm rubbish at maths to I'm really good at maths. Okay, that's not possible. It's not logical. Okay, and I think what I'd be saying here is, when you're talking about changing it to something more effective, you'd say, do you know what? I find maths really difficult. I find it hard. It's hard work for me. I have to work really hard at it, and I don't find it as easy as other people. That doesn't make me a bad person. So when I get into the maths test, I'm going to take a deep breath. I'm going to stop. I'm going to ground my feet into the floor. I'm going to read through, after a few more deep breaths, I'm going to read through the questions on the paper. And I'm going to read them through twice. I'm going to do some more deep breathing, and then I'm going to go back and I'm going to look at the ones I think I can do first, second, third, and I'm going to have a go at those. So you can see it's not as easy as changing a negative to a positive. It's about changing something that's ineffective to something that is slightly more effective. And this involves taking little baby steps, okay, and really challenging yourselves quite gently and not worrying if you get it wrong. Okay, this takes practice. Changing ineffective thinking to effective thinking is a bit like playing the piano. You have to keep going on it, at it again and again and again till it becomes fluent and something natural to you. So I hope that this strategy is something that you might want to consider putting into your toolbox of well-being. You may well use it now at this current time, and that's great. Maybe think about what you do now in terms of keeping your thinking more accurate. what really works for you and what you could do more of. So thank you once again for listening, and I hope you'll join me in the rest of these sessions for Teens and Tweens. Bye-bye.